Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Rabbi Seth Goren.
Thanks, Jordan. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. So, as I begin talking a little bit about the diversity you may not have been aware of here at Lehigh, I'm going to break it into two parts. The first part, I want to tell a little bit about myself and my own personal story, just as our other panelists have shared a little bit about themselves. And second, I want to talk a little bit about how I view what the diversity you may not have been aware of and how it comes into play here at Lehigh. So, to talk about three aspects of diversity that I feel like I bring to most situations here at Lehigh. Situation number one, I'm Jewish. This is not the diversity you may not have been aware of. If you're not aware of this, we have other things we should talk about. The second aspect of that is that I'm actually a rabbi, which again, okay, fine, I can see how you might be a little onto that. We're getting done with that. I have some mock facial hair for November. So there's some kind of stereotypes we have of what a rabbi is supposed to be like. But the real kind of diversity that I often bring to a situation that people are not aware of is the fact that I am the campus Jew. Let's be honest, we all know this is the case. We're often in situations where we are the representative of a group that is a minority or a non-dominant group, and so people kind of put certain expectations on us. We end up speaking for that entire group. We end up representing millions and millions, or in some cases billions of people. We end up giving pronouncements that people say, oh, well, that must be how Jews act or how Jews think, or what Jews view in terms of how the world functions, or Jewish theological or philosophical positions. My guess is that each of us kind of has a situation where that's been the case, where each of us may not have been the campus Jew, especially if you're not Jewish, but in most situations, I'm guessing that most of us have been in at least one context where we have been that representative of an entire group. So that's identity number one. Identity number two, I am white. Ish. A friend of mine in college one time said, well, you're not really, you're kind of like a khaki. Especially in the summer. But, you know, that's a separate issue. But when it comes down to it, really, I am, by and large, white. And the reason I bring this up is not because you're not aware of the fact that I am white. The reason I bring this up is because when one is part of a dominant group, it doesn't mean that we are not part of diversity. It's often, in fact, the diversity that's right in front of our eyes that we have on a very regular basis. But that we forget that that too is a dimension of diversity in terms of how we are and how the campus demographics shape up. So I'm Jewish, I'm white. So this one is really the diversity you may not be aware of. I'm gay. It's okay, my mom knows. But the reason that you may not have been aware of this is a couple of different reasons. I say reason number one, often when we have one identity that is not mainstream, that one identity eclipses every other dimension of who we are. So in my case, as we were talking about earlier, I am the campus Jew. There often is not enough room in people's minds for me to have any other non-dominant identity. It's like, so I'm Seth, I'm Jewish, I'm from Philadelphia, I'm an Eagles fan, I used to be a lawyer, blah, 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 blah. And I'm gay. It's like, and I'm going to be like, that's nice, you're Jewish. The second reason is that I have two identities that people often see as being in conflict. On the one hand, I'm a rabbi, which means you're religious, which often means that you're conservative and traditional and stodgy, and all of these other things that people often ascribe to religious people, whether rightly or wrongly. I would hopefully argue wrongly, but I guess I am kind of stodgy, but it's a separate issue. On the other hand, I'm gay. These two different identities are very difficult for people to see as being held by the same person. So often I find that when people say, oh, you're gay, that's nice, it often kind of skips their memory. To the point that when I first got to Lehigh, this was very uncomfortable, I actually accidentally went on a date with a woman whom I had been told that I was gay, but for some reason had not really internalized it. It's very awkward. So, in those ways, I would say that I am, those are kind of the diversity you may not have been aware of in terms of how I connect with them. In terms of how the diversity you may not have been aware of tends to function, whether at Lehigh or in the broader world as a whole. My personal position is that diversity is often boiled down to numbers and statistics. This is not really what diversity is to me, at least not at its core. It's not about how many people you have from any different group. It's more about how those different groups interact on a human and on an individual level. It is not about the fact that you have a campus that is 3% African American and 15% Jewish and 90-some-odd% from New Jersey. It is about how all of those different people with all of those different identities connect with each other. In essence, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So, in that context, my personal feeling is that it's about the spaces that we connect for people to share their stories, and the willingness that people in a given community have to be open with one another. That takes a number of different forms. I want to unpack that for a second. It requires each of us to be open to listening to other people's stories and experiences and perspectives, which is actually much harder than it sounds. And most of us can be very good at talking, and kind of talking about things that are a little bit more superficial. It takes a lot more active energy to be present for someone else and to listen to them as they share how they view the world, what they see as being important, and how they understand everyone around them. It also means that each one of us has to have a willingness to share his or her personal story. We often think of our stories as being a little bit boring, that there's always someone else who has something more exciting and dynamic in terms of what they've been through. The truth is that each of us in this room and each of us in the world, I'm convinced, has a beautiful and compelling and wonderful narrative that he or she can share with the rest of us. It may be that a person is still looking for that voice, is still looking for that way to share that story. And yet, that story is just as compelling in anything that you will read in the National Enquirer, or that you'll see on Good Morning America, or in any other media that you happen to pay attention to. To be clear, being willing to be open and creating spaces for people to share their stories does not mean a couple of different things. First of all, it does not mean having a spreadsheet of diversity and checking off things as you encounter people who fit different categories. It is not about saying, oh, okay, well, there's this guy down the hall, he's from this particular background, or he has this particular identity. I'm going to go talk to him, and so that way I'll kind of get that out of the way. Or I'm going to go talk to the gay Jew, and that way it's a twofer. That is not what this is about. It's about just being in someone else's presence and being open to them as they share something with you, and as they allow themselves to connect with you in, I would say, a deeper way. It is also not about requiring other people to share with you against their will. It is not about saying, okay, so I see the gay Jew and I'm going to make him tell me his story even if he doesn't want to. Again, it's about allowing things to flow as they naturally do, and being present in those moments when people choose to open up to you. It is similarly not about story vomiting onto other people who do not want to be story vomited on. It's not about singling someone else and saying, I'd like to share with you my story. So whether you want to hear it or not, here it comes. Again, it is about being present for the other person, understanding where they are and what they would like to connect with, and how they would like to connect with you. I want to draw this to a close by talking about an interaction I had with a student a couple months ago. It's a student who's a fifth-year senior and has had a lot of Lehigh experience behind him. We're talking about what he enjoyed about this Lehigh experience and what he thought of it by and large. And one of the questions he said, I just, sometimes I'm not quite sure if I've gotten my money's worth out of my experience here at Lehigh. I said, well, what do you mean by that? What does a $50,000 a year education look like to you? And he said, in the classroom, I feel like I'm fine. I feel prepared for my job. I have a job after I graduate. I'm really excited about it. I feel like I've learned a lot. It's the outside the classroom experience where I'm not sure it really measures up to what I have been spending during my time. So what I would offer to that student, and to all the students who are like him, maybe feel similarly, is that getting $50,000 a year out of an education requires a little bit of openness on your part. It requires actively going out and looking for difference. It requires actually going out and uncovering the diversity you may not have been aware of, that is in your midst and is here with you all of the time. It also requires developing a way for you to share the diversity that you may not have been aware of in yourself, and realizing what you are adding to the community that you're a part of. Thanks.